Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first of a series of live special coverages as we count down to November the 5th in a highly contested presidential election between Democratic nominee Vice President Kamala Harris and Republican nominee former President Donald Trump. In this special coverage, I will be joined in the studio by a distinguished guest as we delve into the latest of the race to the White House. Stay tuned.
We are not going back.
And we will make America great again. Fight, fight.
Ladies and gentlemen, please let me first begin by introducing our special guest in the studio, political analyst Dr. Khalid. Khalid, it's always a pleasure having you with us here on KTV2.
Thank you for inviting me.
Dr. Khalid, the first series of the episode for the elections that are coming up on November the 5th.
Yes.
Shall we delve in to the first question?
Sure.
Dr. Khalid, first of all, give us your general thoughts on how the U.S. presidential election is shaping up so far.
Well, I think the current period is described by the Western media and American media as the dead heat, meaning it's almost 2 weeks to the elections, and thus everything is heated up, the debates, the discussions, the general atmosphere of the elections in the states, as I said, is like in a dead heat stage.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, in less than 2 weeks before November 5th, we will witness maybe different surprises, surprises in the elections, the number of votes, new supporters for both candidates. However, we have to wait until we see what comes on November 5th. But currently, as I said, it's really a very heated stage. It's everything is expected.
Shall we expect any surprises coming up soon?
Well, it's the nature of the American elections to carry some kind of surprises.
Correct.
Either through the candidate's behavior or some news bringing up new issues about the personal lives of both candidates. So that there are so many surprises. And of course, the focus currently of both campaigns is on the swing states or the battleground states. Thus, you will see before November the 5th, a lot of visits by both candidates to those states, trying to shore up the supports.
So we shouldn't jump into any conclusions yet. We still have some time to go, approximately around 2 weeks. As we know, things are changing on a daily basis, especially with what we are seeing worldwide. Indeed,
and of course we need to remember too that the special nature of the American elections is based on a compromise. We'll discuss that maybe later. The electoral college, which may decide the winner. So meaning if one candidate wins the popular vote, he or she may not win the presidency because of the elections in the Electoral College.
Correct. We're going to delve deeper into the Electoral College later, but we want to talk about President Joe Biden. As we see, the race have witnessed a major shift, especially when President Joe Biden dropped out. How has that decision impacted the current race right now?
I think it's impacted the Democratic campaign negatively because Harris, as a vice president, did not have a long history of, if you like, special achievements. In other words, she leans more on Biden's plans, economic plans, social plans, all kinds of, especially things relating to the economy. So the timing of the dropping out of President Biden seems to have created so many challenges for the Democratic Party, because Harris served for the last 4 years as the vice president, and the vice president usually in the history of American elections is like a supplemental, an extra kind of an additional position that may not contribute greatly to the success of a campaign, especially after the meltdown of the Harris, of the Trump and Biden debate. The Democrats describe the failure of President Biden in the debate with Trump as the debate meltdown, because he basically...
Speaking about the debate, as far as we know, that there was actually just one debate between Harris and Trump. Is that correct?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, just one. Yes.
Tell us your thoughts about that debate.
Well, according to recent opinion polls, Harris seems to have won, even though that the American public remains very pessimistic about the economy. Yet, what seems to matter after the debate is whether Harris was able to embarrass Trump, and she did actually succeed in provoking him, just to show that he has a volatile temperament. In other words, she wanted to show him in the debate as someone who is unreliable, and she seems to have succeeded in provoking his anger. As we have noticed in the debate, he made so many false claims about immigrants eating cats and dogs, and some states allowing the killing of babies, and so many issues he raised using the usual Trump dialogue. In other words, he would focus more on the personal element of the opposing party, rather than say outlaying his economic plans. But the outcome of the debate, I think, was favored Harris, because she seems to have been very composed, and according to some observers, she actually succeeded in prosecuting him, being a former prosecutor herself. So ultimately I think she won the debate, and that seems to have helped her raise her ratings among the American public.
So you think by her winning that debate, the outcome on the voters have raised in Harris's favor?
Well, I think it just maybe within this current election, one would count a couple of digits. In other words, she lacks the experience of a political position. In other words, being a vice president, she was just an advisor, if you like, to the president. So people are trying to see whether she has a clear message, whether she will be able to voice her own message in her own words. She presented herself during the debate and before the debate as the new change, the new way forward.
Correct.
These are the words that she used to describe her approach. Yet most of her economic plans rely heavily on Biden's economic plans.
Dr. Khalid, we're going to take a quick break and delve into more questions, as we know, like always. Dear viewers, now we'll take a quick break with our first report for those who are not familiar with the U.S. election and may not know much about the Electoral College and how it will decide the election. Let us take a look at this report and an explanation of the Electoral College.
The Electoral College has been much talked about in both 2016 and 2020 election cycles, and probably now more than ever, as the results of the recent political climate has been two presidents elected without popular vote plurality. Though this almost seems baked into the modern national political ecosystem, the notion of the electoral breaking with the popular vote seemed almost academic until 2000, since it has been a reality of a great significance. The Electoral College is the term used to describe the electors, whose votes ultimately decide the presidential election by casting votes on behalf of their district or state. Once a presidential candidate attains a majority of the electoral votes, they then have won the presidential election. In total, there are 538 votes cast for president currently, 535, 2 for each state and 1 for each congressional district. In addition, 3 further electoral votes are cast on behalf of the voters of Washington, D.C. If any candidate receives 270 electoral votes, they have won the presidential election. It is possible, though highly unlikely, for an electoral tie of 269. In this case, or if no candidate receives a majority under some other circumstance, the presidential election is decided by the Congress, with the House of Representatives casting 1 vote per state for president and the Senate deciding the vice president, each casting a vote for that office.
Joining us now live from Washington is Mr. Aziz Fahmy, an expert commentator on American affairs. Welcome, Mr. Aziz.
Marhaba.
Mr. Aziz, can you please give us your thoughts on the current stage of the U.S. presidential election for the year of 2024, and where do the main candidates stand as of now?
Well, according to the polls, Harris has a slight 3-point percentage ahead of Trump on nationwide. But as the report indicates, the most important thing is the Electoral College. And in 2016, Trump was won the White House through the Electoral College, despite the fact that he lost the popular vote. So in American politics, the most important factor is the Electoral College, and therefore the swing states. And the race is very close between both of them, Harris and Trump, in the swing states. Few votes here or there can really tip the balance toward one of them. That's why it is really hard to make prediction as who will win.
Correct.
Everything is possible in American election, and it's this is a very, very end of the race, where most of the Americans actually decide for whom they will vote. I mean, that's the big irony about the democracy in the United States. Though democracy is really indeed an American invention, because all the talk about, Greek was the first democracy, well, this is not historically correct. Greece was ruled by a single ruler who invaded the rest of the Greek states and then invaded Persia and completely destroyed the economic system. So the American experiment is indeed the first democratic experiment in the world, and America is very proud of this and pride itself as being democratic. However, the problem is most of the people are not so involved in politics throughout the year and the years, but a lot of them decide who they will vote for in the last 2-3 weeks. And that decision is emotionally driven more than politically driven. And that is really the bad thing about the American democracy. And that's why there is something called October surprise. What is October surprise? Any event whether it is relevant or irrelevant, important or semi-important, can happen in the last few days and can swing some voters from one side to the other, and then the other side will win the elections. And, you know, after the elections, people would not remember this October surprise. And so, you know, it's a good system, but it's not perfect system. And it is the best system available, but again, it's not the best system. It has its own faults.
Mr. Aziz, let's move to the economy part. Can you please tell us how do you compare the candidates' policies when it comes to the economy?
It's huge difference on that score, because Trump's recipe for economy is huge tax cut for the rich people like himself, and huge tariff on the other countries importing goods from. And a lot of economists said that, you know, the tariffs in the end hurt American consumer because the producing countries increase their prices. And who pay the tariff? It's the American consumer. So a lot of economists explain that. So Trump's idea is that I will give tax cut to the rich people, which means that deficit in the balanced budget, and then he would compensate this deficit by adding tariff on the other countries. But in the end, the American people pay for the tariffs. So the American people get lost twice. They lose twice in this policy. On the other hand, Kamala Harris is trying to put forward program to help new businesses, to help new families form by giving them tax credit for newborn children and so forth. So the difference cannot be starker between the two approaches.
So we have two different debatable arguments for each candidate that the American people should decide by November the 5th. Mr. Aziz, let's move to the Middle East. How are the escalating tensions in the Middle East affecting the U.S. presidential election race?
This is very important question because generally speaking, Americans don't vote for foreign affairs. They vote for their pocketbooks. So the economy and the taxes are the most important factor for people when they get to vote. But this year, it's going to be different because there is a lot of people who are in swing states like Ohio, Michigan, Georgia, Nevada, who has sizable Arab American community who were extremely angry with the Biden administration endless support for Israel in its war against Gaza. And they decided that they're not going to vote. So if they actually don't vote, this could be a factor that can help Trump, because very few hundreds of votes here and there can really determine who wins a particular swing states and therefore who can wins the White House. So it is a very, very dangerous game in that way. And I think 2024 will be remembered as one of the few elections that were affected by foreign policy.
Correct. Thank you again, Mr. Aziz, for being with us here.
Thank you for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, and we're back now with Dr. Khalid. Dr. Khalid, let's focus on the Electoral College. But before we dig deeper into the Electoral College, what is the Electoral College? As a professional, from a professional standpoint, we need to get the answer from you to show it to our audience.
Indeed. The Electoral College is basically a compromise, a historical compromise that goes back to the Constitutional Convention of the 18th century, where the writers of the Constitution, if you like, and the early fathers of America, if you like, decided to create a compromise where they combine both the popular vote and the Congress vote in deciding the presidency. In other words, the Electoral College basically decides who wins, regardless of the popular vote. For example, in the last election of the 2016, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, whereas
Donald Trump won the electoral
college. Yeah, and basically it's a constitutional system where each state elects an electoral, if you like, representative, meaning a congressman who basically represents the electoral college. And this depends also, of course, on the density of the population, the number of counties in each state, and each state would elect a member of the electoral college among the congressmen. So this is a process that goes along with the elections of the presidency. So indeed, it's according to many observers, this might be a fairer system because it's like a hybrid system, a constitutional system and a popular system. They describe it usually in the American culture as a hybrid system, where the popular votes are balanced by the electoral college. And of course, this has been the process, the convention, for the last 200 years or so. And yet, the popular vote also decides the vote in the electoral college, meaning the number of votes that a candidate gets in different states, especially the swing states. If he gets more votes, meaning he will get more congressmen, meaning he will get more members of the electoral college, meaning he will win the electoral college. So it's like basically a compromise that can use the popular vote also to advance the number of electoral representatives. So maybe with time we will notice kind of a change in this hybrid system, because maybe due to different aspects, maybe the rise of the Hispanic population, the rise of Asian Americans, all these elements, meaning the population and also the
rise in migration in general.
Yeah, the migration, also the creation of counties within the states can basically change the outcome of the electoral college. But the system itself, the hybrid system, I think, will remain. But what will change maybe is the impact of the popular vote on the electoral college, meaning in the next few decades.
So is it, at the end of the day, from your standpoint of view, is it a good thing or a bad thing, or not necessarily?
Well,
neither.
Neither, because it suits, if you like, the American elections, American political system. It has been used maybe by some South American countries, in certain countries, maybe I think Argentina, but this has been an American convention, and it goes back again to the Constitutional Convention of the 1760s, meaning during the American Revolution and immediately after the American Revolution, where they wanted to meaning the writers of the declaration wanted to guarantee, if you like, that dictatorship doesn't rise in the states. So this is one of the safeguards, if you like, of preventing dictatorship to rise in the United States because of different issues.
Do you think the United States one day will decide to rely on the popular vote just alone? Or is it highly?
I don't think so. As long as there are two main parties, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, maybe the other, if you like, smaller parties might not have a greater impact than they have today. Meaning today the minor parties, the Liberal Party, the Reform Party, and other kinds of if you like, political parties will not have the same advantage as the same historical advantage of both parties, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Thus, I think maybe with time, again, we will see maybe a greater impact of the popular vote on changing the nature of the electoral college rather than just choosing the popular vote.
Let me ask you this. For this special presidential race, what do you think is the most important issue for the voters over there in the United States right now?
I think, of course, the economy is the most important, if you like, issue, in addition to immigration, in addition to abortion, in addition to crime, unemployment, and other issues. But the main issue here is the economy, meaning what will decide the election. Every American election, I think every American election has been decided by the economy, how the candidates presents their economic plans, especially because of different economic issues. Thus, so unemployment, say Harris, for example, argues that will raise taxes on the middle class, whereas Trump is accused of cutting off taxes on his quote-unquote buddies, meaning big businesses.
So there is a huge difference between their agendas.
Well, yeah, indeed, one needs to be also very specific.
Regarding economy,
regarding economy, the American public in general, according to the recent polls, have a very pessimistic view on the economy, the nature of the economy itself, and both candidates, according to the American public, do not have a clear advantage when it comes to economy. In other words, their plans. For example, Harris relies heavily on the earlier Biden plans. Trump does not seem to present any new ideas, and thus, economically speaking, however, many voters prefer Harris because she presents herself as a new way forward. She is not clear about that, but when it comes to employment and the economy, her plans are almost identical to the Republican Party. Yeah.
We'll dig deeper into the economy segment throughout our segment later, but we're going to take another break to take a look at another report. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a quick look at our second report as we focus on Democratic candidate Kamala Harris.
Kamala Devi Harris is the 49th Vice President of the United States in the Democratic administration of President Joe Biden. Prior to political life, Harris worked as a deputy district attorney from 1990 to 1998 in Oakland, California. She rose through the ranks, becoming district attorney in 2004, and additionally in 2010 she was narrowly elected Attorney General of California, winning by a margin of less than 1%, and thus becoming the first woman and the first Black American to hold the post. In 2012, Harris delivered a memorable address at the Democratic National Convention, raising her national profile. Furthermore, in early 2015, Harris declared her candidacy, and on the campaign trail, she called for immigration and criminal justice reform, an increase in the minimum wage, and protection of women's reproductive rights. As Vice President, Harris's call to action was the Public-Private Partnership Central America Forward, also known as CAF, and the idea behind CAF is to support the creation of local jobs and other measures in order to slow the flow of mass migration. It generated more than $5.2 billion since its launch in 2021, and its partners include more than 50 companies and organizations that have committed to supporting economic growth in the Central American region. Finally, in September 2023, Biden established the first-ever White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention to reduce gun violence, overseen by Vice President Harris, as announced by the White House. The Office of Gun Violence Prevention builds upon actions taken by the Biden-Harris administration to end gun violence, which include the signing of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act.
After viewing the following report on Vice President Harris, we're going to get back to Dr. Khalid to get more into that report. Dr. Khalid, as we've seen the report together on Vice President Harris, how is she trying to convey her own message that her presidency will differ actually from President Joe Biden?
Well, the Democratic campaign argues that her approach is different. But of course, according to observers, most of the economic plans she basically inherited from the Biden administration and from President Biden. However, she uses a couple of terms to describe her approach as the new way forward. Even though that this is an ambiguous term, but it describes kind of a new political and economic way forward. And she presents herself as a change or the new change. Yet observers do argue, political observers do argue that the only change she brings on the table is the change of her race and her identity. These are the only new elements in her candidacy. She does not have a clear advantage in regards to the economy in comparison to Trump. Thus, she basically utilizes her ethnic background, her earlier prosecutor role, if you like, and many other elements in her life as someone who argues that she prosecuted many criminals, and she was, if you like, a great prosecutor. And maybe this is a true element in her profile, her prosecution history, if you like. Yet otherwise other details of her if you like approach are not really clear yet, even though that we are only 2 weeks from the elections.
Correct.
And I think this will impact her campaign negatively, because Trump might use this lack of experience in Harris
against her.
Yeah.
I still haven't forgot about the economy question. We're going to dig deeper into economy, but later throughout this segment. But since we are stuck, we saw that report, together. Let's talk about who Harris selected. Tim Walz as her running mate. Do you see that as a good pick?
Well, the Minnesota governor is really a very good pick, because his approach to politics is similar to Harris. In other words, he was an earlier supporter of the LGBT student movement. He also supported veteran rights, because he basically served for more than 2 decades in the National Guard. And he also basically someone who can guarantee at least a specific segment of the voters, especially the LGBT.
So basically, he checks the checklist and all the check marks for the Democratic Party.
Indeed, he does, because as we discussed earlier today, most of the both candidates try to invite the younger generations to vote. In other words, focusing on the LGBT and picking Tim Walz as someone with a known history of supporting such movement might bring in more votes to the campaign, to Harris's campaigns.
Dr. Khalid, shall we take a stop and take a look at another report for the other candidate, President Donald Trump? Now turning over to the Republican candidate, former President Donald Trump, let us take a closer look at his campaign in this report.
Donald J. Trump is the 45th President of the United States from 2017 to 2021 and the Republican nominee in the U.S. presidential election of 2024. His pre-election life: Trump began his business career while still in college, investing in Philadelphia real estate before joining his father's business full-time in 1968. Throughout 1970s, Trump expanded the Trump Organization by acquiring properties outside New York City and moving into Manhattan's affluent market. The 1980s solidified his reputation as a major developer with notable projects like the Trump Tower in Atlantic City. By the time he announced his presidential candidacy in 2015, the Trump Organization had diverged extensively. In June 2015, Trump announced that he would be a candidate in the U.S. presidential election of 2016, pledging to make America great again. He won the 2016 presidential election against Hillary Clinton by securing key states in the Electoral College. His campaign effectively focused on issues like immigration, trade, and economic revival, resonating with voters in battleground states. The Trump administration, which lasted from January 2017 to January 21, was marked by significant policies and events. One major economic initiative was the Tax Cut and Job Act, TCJA, that reduced the top marginal federal corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%, highlighted as the most significant federal tax reform enacted in the United States in decades. Furthermore, in foreign policy, Trump reshaped America's role on the global stage. He renegotiated trade agreements, including the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, and adopted a confrontational stance towards China. And lastly, his administration's historic summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un regarding denuclearization.
Joining us live now, also from Washington, is Dr. Nabil Mikhail, writer and political analyst in Washington, D.C. Dr. Nabil, welcome.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm ready for the question.
Thank you, Dr. Nabil. Dr. Nabil, what approach is Vice President Kamala Harris using for her campaign to convey her own message? We want to know your opinion from Washington.
Thank you very much. I think she is focusing on the critical battleground states known as the swinging or the swing vote states. This is why she has been scheduling campaign rallies in these 7 battleground states. She will be making appearances this week in Georgia, in North Carolina, in Wisconsin, in Michigan, and the rest. She actually has paid a great deal of attention in her campaign to Georgia. President Trump lost Georgia by 12,000 votes to Joe Biden in 2020. So by focusing on Georgia, the peach state, she tries really to snatch that 16 electoral college vote from Trump to her column, and that would be a major setback to Trump. On the other hand, she's also trying to sharpen her message a little bit. She has been accused of dodging many questions. Her interviews, Fox Channel, was not successful. She does not give specific answers. She prefers to be general in description of her plans. I think also she made a critical trip last week to Philadelphia, and this is really a very crucial constituency. Some polls indicated that she's not doing that well with black men. This is why she got an endorsement from former President Barack Obama, who actually came to her side, and in a very remarkable speech last week, he rebuked all these black men who are still hesitant and have second thoughts over their endorsement and voting for Kamala Harris. As you may know, all these talks are occurring against the background of the fact that early voting has already started in so many states. There are actually very encouraging signs for the two sides, in fact, but also it's a good indication of active political participation by the American voters. I think in the very first day, 350,000 people, voters from North Carolina, voted. That's a very significant number. So I expect that at least close to 170 million Americans will vote this year. that should be an increase of 10 million voters over the figures from 2024 years ago.
Dr. Nabil, let's move to the other side, to the other candidate. Excuse me. How do you see the Trump campaign now? Is he running a similar or different approach from the past election?
In fact, there are some similarities between the two candidates, despite the fact they are opposite on everything. Trump as well is focusing also on the battleground states. I think today he is in North Carolina. He will be touring Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada. He has been highly spirited because he has received some good polling numbers. The big gap that resulted from the surge in the popularity of Kamala Harris after the debate and previously after the decline of President Biden to run again, that has been offset by good polling figures for President Trump. Like say, one polling agency that actually collects the average of the polls, known as 270 to win, has shown him ahead in 3 battleground states, in Nevada, in Arizona, in Georgia, in North Carolina, tied in Nevada, and slightly behind, even less than 1% of the votes in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. I think also Pennsylvania has a peculiar nature. It is rich in its votes. 19 electoral college votes is a big prize. Interestingly, he is being aided by a very wealthy figure. In this case, I mean Elon Musk, who actually has been campaigning for him and even giving money to people who sign up petitions to solicit votes or to register people to vote. So actually he has been doing very well in Pennsylvania. And just a few minutes ago, I looked up the figures from the Secretary of the State's office in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. In 1 week, the Republican Party...
Dr. Nabil, thank you for your time and for being with us here tonight. Thank you so much, Dr. Nabil.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get back to more questions with Dr. Khalid. Dr. Khalid, let's get back to the report that we saw about former U.S. President Donald Trump. How do you see the Trump campaign right now? Is it different or is it similar than his previous campaign?
Well, I think it's different because currently the campaign started to get funding
through well-known figures.
Through actually unconventional approaches. For example, now the campaign is using something called crowdfunding, meaning getting funding directly from the supporters. And one other controversial element in the current campaign is that the campaign started to get funding from profit organizations, companies, rather than relying on the conventional Republican venue of funding, which is non-profit organizations. So he's basically using different approaches to increase the funding. And of course, the funding in this particular election goes for example, the victims of the hurricane, goes for assisting the poor and other. And in other words, both parties vie each other and challenge each other on how much money they contributed to the funding of the victims of the last hurricane. So in other words, it's crowdfunding, a new approach.
That has helped him. So this is a new approach.
And
he hasn't done that in previous
No, he hasn't
campaign.
done that. Okay. No, I think no other Republican
has ever done that.
Did that, meaning directly approaching the voters to support. Of course, the voters do not contribute directly to the campaign. They contribute to profit organizations, and then those profit organizations or non-profit organizations fund, if you like, the campaign. And this is a very unconventional approach to getting, if you like, the money. Yet also the campaign itself can be described too as rather in a heated stage. Both parties, both campaigns are in what many describe as dead heat, meaning just before 2 weeks before the elections.
Dr. Khalid, we're going to take a quick break here and take a look at the following report and get back to more questions. Okay. Now we take a look at another report with both candidates have intensified their campaigns in the battleground states. Let us take a look at how vital those states will be in deciding the elections.
The Democrats gained the presidency in 2020 with the support of the Grand Canyon state of Arizona, which narrowly voted to back the party's candidate for the first time since the 1990s. Donald Trump won Arizona in 2016 by nearly 4 percentage points, but lost the state to Joe Biden in 2020 by less than half a percentage point. A third of Georgia's population is African American, one of the country's largest proportions of black residents, and it is believed that this demographic was instrumental in Biden flipping the state in 2020. Donald Trump won Georgia in 2016 by about 5 percentage points, but lost there to Joe Biden in 2020 by less than 12,000 votes. The race this year is a toss-up, with Trump and Harris locked in the polls. The Great Lakes state of Michigan has picked the winning presidential candidate in the last two elections. Despite backing Biden in 2020, it has become symbolic of a nationwide backlash over the U.S. support of the Israeli occupation and its aggression on Gaza. Michigan has the country's largest proportion of Arab Americans, a demographic whose support for Biden was in jeopardy. Donald Trump won Michigan in 2016, surprising Democrats and a state Republicans hadn't won since 1988. Joe Biden won there in 2020, besting Trump by 3 percentage points. With Kamala Harris and Trump tied in the polls, the state is a toss-up headed into Election Day. The silver state of Nevada has voted Democrat for the last several elections, but there are signs of a possible turnaround by the Republicans. Recent averages published by poll tracking firm 538 indicate that polls once showed Trump enjoying a wide lead over Biden, but that advantage has shrunk since Harris became the top of the ticket. Polls appear to have tightened the Tar Heel state of North Carolina after Harris assumed her place at the top of the ticket, and some analysts now call it a toss-up state. North Carolina hasn't voted for a Democrat for president since 2008, but Kamala Harris's campaign has targeted as a state she can win, buoyed by its large black population. Donald Trump won there in 2016 by 3 percentage points, and in 2020 by 1 percentage point. Both sides have been campaigning heavily in the Keystone state of Pennsylvania. The state proved pivotal in the 2020 election, backing Biden, who has often spoken of his connection to the working-class city of Scranton, where he grew up. Pennsylvania is emerging as the most critical battleground state in the 2024 election. Donald Trump won the state by less than 1 percentage point in 2016 and lost it by about 1 percentage point in 2020. Kamala Harris has remained competitive there, and the state is classified as a toss-up. And finally, the Badger state of Wisconsin also picked the winning presidential candidate in both 2016 and 2020 by a margin of little more than 20,000 votes each time. Wisconsin is a toss-up battleground state that has swung between Democrats and Republicans. Donald Trump won there in 2016 by less than 1 percentage point, but Joe Biden won there in 2020 also by less than 1 percentage point.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue with our questions with Dr. Khalid Al-Jamfawi here in the studio. Dr. Khalid, let's talk about the battleground state. Will likely determine the winner of the elections. Is that correct?
I think they will do because as they are described as the battleground states, they are also described as the swing states, you know, Philadelphia, Arizona, Michigan, and North Carolina. And so I think they will, as they have done many times, if you like, in other words, the swing states will decide the presidency, yet also the popular vote in those states might change. In other words, the voters or the popular vote will increase the number of electoral representatives, if you like, and thus within those states. In other words, the swing states are a mini representation of the electoral college, as many as many electoral representatives are voted, if you like, and succeed, as these 7 states, if you like, will decide the votes in the Electoral College. Of course, this also includes the 530 members of the House and 100 congressmen. These are the people who will basically vote in the Electoral College. So the swing states will contribute the larger number of electoral representatives. Thus, indeed, I think the current situation is that is very volatile. Say in regards to Michigan, for example, where you see a sizable Arab minority, I think the both candidates will not succeed in getting any almost significant support from the Arab minority in Michigan, especially in Detroit, in the county of Detroit, because of the Gaza issue and because of the Israeli aggression against Lebanon. And all these issues, of course,
in the Middle East, that's going on.
And both candidates, Harris and Trump, showing unlimited support to Israel.
Before we dig deeper, let's take a quick look at this following report, where we're going to take a look about U.S. citizens' viewpoints. Let's say. We will take another quick break. At this time, let us hear from the U.S. citizens on who they prefer for president.
Where we were 4 years ago and where we are now, there definitely is a big change financially, economically, job-wise. I mean, I lost my job in January, which I wasn't too happy about, and a lot of businesses are downgrading. So I understand what's going on, and it's hurtful for people. Thank goodness I'm close to retirement, but people who have families and children that they're bringing up, it hurts them immensely.
Just having her present makes us feel better. It's like a weight off our shoulders. He brings a lot of youthful energy into this race that was lacking because she had 2 elderly men, and I'm elderly. And they were like, this just didn't feel right. This feels appropriate.
I voted for Kamala Harris because I think we need to return sanity to the White House.
I'm a Democrat. I'm for Kamala Harris. But either way it goes, I'm extremely concerned about the Middle East. Huge concern. I'm Palestinian. And even though I'm a Democrat, I'm not crazy about what they're doing either. But neither party is really doing the right thing for the Middle East,
I can't wait for it to be over. It's been a long process, and I think it's going to be very close, but I'm hoping Trump wins because of the economy.
I think it is going to be close, but I believe that there are probably enough people that are reasonable enough to look at all of the facts and think, we really don't have a choice in this election.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a few minutes for a last question here with Dr. Khalid Al-Jimfawi. Dr. Khalid, before we get off here, will we see any surprises? For instance, will we see Florida going for Vice President Kamala Harris instead of former President Donald Trump?
Well, it's maybe Florida going to the Democrats or Harris is a far-fetched, almost impossibility. But usually, one cannot predict any certain results from the current, especially within the context of the current elections, because as we approach the November 5th, maybe we'll see other swing states changing, if you like, alliances. If you like, maybe Arizona will go to the Democrats or whatever, yeah. But maybe Philadelphia, because it's one of the largest states, as long as the Republican control the House, meaning the Philadelphia House and the Congress, I don't think the Harris will achieve any significant inroads into Philadelphia. But maybe, who knows, maybe because of the heated issues in the Middle East, You may notice one candidate raising, say, the issue of the ceasefire in Gaza just to attract the voters in Michigan.
But surprises are known in these situations, especially with we have many things going on worldwide, especially the upcoming days, like we've seen previously in the past year.
Yeah, it's very volatile and it's a very volatile
and it's still
situation.
Early to decide on anything or any surprises. As we know, we still have 15 more days before the final date, correct?
Yeah, now 2 weeks, I think. Two weeks, yeah. 2 weeks, yeah. I think currently Harris seems to have won at least above Trump with few digits, but otherwise no one knows what kind of surprises we will see and witness in the next 2 weeks.
We will discuss these in the following. As we know, this is one of many episodes that we are going to be covering the Elections Day. Once again, it's always a pleasure to have you with us here on our set on KTV2. On behalf of the entire team, I'd like to thank you for being with us here tonight, and we hopefully we look forward to seeing you again in the following episodes. Thank you so much for being with us, Dr.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Dear viewers, that brings us to the end of the special coverage of the U.S. presidential elections with 15 days left until Election Day on November the 5th. Be sure to stay up to date with our special coverages on this major election. And once again, thank you for watching and have a good night.